Don't forget to check out the Murphy's Inc. Facebook page. Season 1's all done and up there ready if you listen to, and Season 2's hot in production. Okay, so that's on with the story. Look at that. Woo! Oh, wait. Oh, I'll be jiggered. Is that a word? Looks like the stream's working again. Nuts. Now that means I got to prove that it's them and not me. Well. So this one is called Midnight Dreary by an author named Goingback. And no, that's his name. Um, he's a Native American, and he has some really interesting stories. I just discovered him, a month or two ago. And he looks like you might expect him to look like. Looks like a neat guy. So, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. Huh? He wakened and knew not why, but something had disturbed his slumber, that is. An unfamiliar sound, perhaps. An air current out of place in the normal stillness dancing across his flesh, tickling the back of his neck like spider legs and causing the tiny hairs on his arms to stir. But he saw nothing threatening, only the darkness covering his eyes. And he heard nothing unusual in that blackness, just the steady drone of a narrator's voice. A narrator? Pushing his uniform cap back on his head, Corporal Alex Brown opened his eyes and sat up straight in the swivel chair, staring at the console of switches and flickering lights directly in front of him. Removing his wireless earpiece and setting it on the console, he sat motionless, listening carefully. He had heard something out of the ordinary, he was certain of that. A voice, no, a noise, interlaced with the narrator's voice on the audiobook. But all he heard now were sounds associated with commercial space travel, the whirring of tiny fans, keeping electronics cool, the click of automated switches, the breathing of life support systems, and the constant hum of electrical motors. They were familiar noises, of course, ones he had grown accustomed to on his many journeys between New Earth and the mining colonies. Familiar clicks, hisses, and beeps that meant their ship, the Condor, was doing its job, keeping Alex and the other 3 crew members safe and alive. He noticed several of the computer systems and view screens were flashing and coming back online, indicating a recent power surge, though nothing to worry about because every system had multiple backups, but it might explain what interrupted his slumber. Passing his hand over the master console, he summoned floating holographic keyboards and another bank of view screens, checking to make sure the others still slept soundly in the crew quarters 1 deck below. He touched a keyboard, switching one of the screens to the camera view in the crew lodging. Even in the darkness of the ship's artificial night, he could see the 4 sleeping nets suspended from the wall, 3 of them currently occupied. Everything looks normal, he thought. He let out a sigh of relief. Happy one of his crew was not out of bed and trying to sneak up and scare the bejesus out of him. Sergeant Bill Monahan, a burly load specialist with a fondness for practical jokes, had done that to him on their last voyage and nearly caused him to soil his one-piece flight suit. The corporal heard a faint voice. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing. Looking down, he saw the wireless earpiece and realized his audiobook still played. Touching one of the other keyboards, he paused the audio and exited the program. Alex had loaded his extensive library of digital and audiobooks into the ship's system prior to liftoff, including the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, of course. A little something to help pass the time on a long and always boring voyage. The ship was fully automated, so there was not a lot for the skeleton crew to do in deep space. They only got busy during liftoff, landing, and docking. Ground crews handled the loading and unloading of cargo. Startled by the sound, Alex spun in his chair to view the rest of the room. Not his imagination, nor a part of a dream. He had definitely heard something. A metallic knocking that echoed through the control room. Damn it, I'm hearing things. He stood, happy the ship's artificial gravity was running, keeping his feet firmly on the floor. He had read about some flight crew members going a little bonkers on long voyages. Especially the rookies. But this was Alex's fourth tour to the Kuiper Belt. He had never had any problems before during the 6-month journey, and he had undergone the mandatory mental and physical reevaluations prior to boarding. According to the tests, he was fit for the trip. Relax, you're not cracking up, he told himself, walking into the center of the room. That could only mean he had actually heard something, and strange knockings were not good news in space, not in a pressurized tin can at 200,000 miles per hour. Unexplained tapping could be a warning something was wrong. They were all trained to know the difference between normal sounds and things which could mean trouble. Alex knew he should report what he heard, but he did not want to wake the captain and others without a good reason. Maybe it was just the metal surface of the ship cooling or expanding. Outer space was an extreme of temperatures ranging from hundreds of degrees below freezing to hot enough to boil your blood. Unusual sounds could be created by radiation, solar flares, and microscopic particles. He looked up. A tapping resonated from above him. An area of ceiling void of electronics, wiring, air ducts, and anything else prone to make noise. There was only ceiling tile, insulation, the ship's hull, and the outside. The knocking came from outside. 3 distinct raps, spaced equally apart, like someone trying to get his attention. Someone wanting in. The corporal hurried back to the console, touching buttons on the holograph keyboards, changing the images on the view screens to outside camera feeds. Could someone really be out there? A launch pad worker, or maybe even a stowaway? Had they somehow fastened themselves to the ship's outer hull? That was impossible, and he knew it. A person could not survive the gravitational forces on the outside during liftoff. Even if they had been wearing a spacesuit capable of long duration and spacewalk, they could not survive days of extreme temperature and radiation. The view screens showed only ship. No mummified or bloated corpse in a tattered spacesuit clinging to the hull, hitching a ride. He started to turn the monitors back off when something moved past one of the exterior cameras, causing the image to momentarily blur in and out of focus. Black and fluid, shapeless as a shadow, like interstellar fog, something seen but not defined. His heart skipped a beat. He looked at the images on the other screens but saw nothing. Corporal Brown turned away from the console, knowing protocol required him to wake up the ship's captain in unusual circumstances. He was halfway across the room when he heard it again. Alex spun around, a tingle of fear marching down his spine. The knocking had changed position, coming from off to his right rather than directly above, and it resonated sharper, but the tapping was not on metal. Instead, it sounded on glass. No rotten way, he whispered. This can't be happening. The tapping came from the crew access door. Something was outside that door, striking against the tiny viewing window. He glanced around the room, feeling very alone and vulnerable. Taking several deep breaths to steady his nerves, he approached the access door. Alex froze, staring at the door. Not just knocking this time. Something scratched against the tiny window. He glanced at the security camera mounted in the corner of the room, knowing his every action was being recorded and possibly monitored by someone back at company headquarters. If he just stood there, he might be judged incompetent and unfit to be part of future missions. Taking another deep breath for courage, Alex lunged past the remaining few feet to the crew access door. He actually crashed against the door, grabbing the heavy rubber seal lining the frame to keep from falling backwards. Holding onto the seal, he thrust his face close to the window and he looked out. At first he saw only the blackness of space and the glow of 1,000,000 distant stars. But then he spotted something even darker, blocking out the tiny points of light behind it. Ebony Feathers. Feathers. Eyes that burned like a smoldering brimstone, a beak so sharp it could pierce a man's heart. Alex cried out, staggering back. A feathered creature clung to the outside of the door, pecking at the window with its sharp beak, attempting to shatter the glass. The corporal turned and fled across the room, rushing to the console and hitting the alarm button. Instantly, bells sounded throughout the ship. Warning lights went off, bathing everything in flashing yellow and red. In the view screens, he saw 3 men struggling to get out of their sleeping nets and don their flight suits. Sergeant Bill Monahan reached the control room first, turning off the alarm. Engineer Doc Howard and Captain Lang arrived moments later. All 3 men looked to Alex for an explanation. Corporal Brown, what's going on here? Captain Lang asked, looking around the room. Why'd you hit the alarm? Alex pointed at the tiny window in the crew access door. Something's out there. Captain Lang looked toward the door. Out where? Out there, Alex replied. On the other side of the door. It knocked on the window, wanting in. Oh, shit, kid, Donahan burst out. You were dreaming. You fell asleep and you had a nightmare. I told you not to listen to those spooky audiobooks of yours. The captain turned around and looked at Monahan. Sergeant, did you have something to do with this? Is this another one of your practical jokes? No, sir. Monahan quickly lost his smile. Not me, Captain. I had nothing to do with this. Scout's honor. I'm not making it up, Alex said, his voice cracking. See for yourself. Captain crossed the room and peered out the tiny glass window. There's nothing out there. Nothing but 1,000,000 miles of empty space. Stepping back from the door, he turned and studied the corporal. What exactly am I supposed to be looking for? Alex lowered his gaze, feeling very foolish. A raven, sir. Monahan again burst out laughing, slapping himself on the thigh. A raven, eh? That's a good one. I swear, kid, you... Huh? The rapping sounded directly above them, loud, sharp, undeniable, causing all 4 of them to freeze in place. They stood there, staring at the ceiling and listening carefully. Monahan spoke first. That's going to be a loose piece of cowling or something, eh? Something flapping around out there. We must have dropped a few rivets during takeoff. Why didn't we hear it earlier then? Captain Lang asked. It must have taken a while to work loose, you know. It's not a piece of cowling, Howard disagreed. Not a piece of the ship flapping around. The taps are too evenly spaced for that. Someone is out there. Or something, Alex added. Man, must be a load crew member, Donahan said, staring at the spot in the ceiling. They must have gotten stuck somehow. You know that's impossible, Sergeant, Captain Lang said. Even with a suit, they wouldn't survive this long. Okay, what then? Alex cleared his throat. It's a raven. Don't you say raven again, Monahan warned. There's no such thing as a space raven. Heh. Look for yourself, Alex replied. The cameras recorded it. The captain strode across to the room to the console. The others joined him. Here, look. Alex touched a button to play the camera footage. The others watched the mysterious shadow glide over the top of the ship and disappear from sight. Kid, that's only a shadow of something. It doesn't prove nothing. Sergeant Monahan shook his head. It proves something's out there, Alex argued. Yeah, it's electrical or something, Doc Howard said. The image blurred as it moved past the cameras. But, yeah, maybe it could just be a glitch or a burst of gamma rays. Captain Lang nodded. Gentlemen, I think, ding, 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 ding. For the second time that night, alarm bells sounded, startling all 4 men. Now what? Monahan asked. They all looked at the view screens. A bright yellow warning light came on. Aft airlock door, Doc Howard pointed, turning off the alarm. Something set off the sensors. Yeah, 'cause something wants in, Alex whispered. All right, let's check it out. The captain opened a drawer and grabbed several electrical tasers, passing them out. Alex hesitated when taking one. Captain Lang smiled. Just in case your boogeyman turns out to be real, right? They descended to the ship's lower level and moved aft, following a narrow walkway between the workstations and the storage lockers, passing the tiny galley and lavatory. Reaching the cargo area, Captain Lang opened the access door and stepped through. The others followed in single file through the narrow doorway. The cargo hold was full of metal barrels and crates and enormous shipping containers filled with supplies for mining ships working in the Kuiper Belt. There were containers labeled in English, Chinese, Arabic, and New Russian. Along the ceiling above them were massive payload doors that opened during loading and unloading of cargo. All of the containers were fastened in place to keep them from shifting during the long journey. It would not do for a metal cylinder containing tons of mining equipment to go rolling freely and slam into the ship's walls. A breach in the hull could mean instant depressurization and death for all of them. They're halfway through the cargo area when Monahan stopped. "Hello, what's this?" The others stopped to see what had gotten the sergeant's attention. A few feet away, a large wooden barrel lay on its side. It was not secured, and a dark liquid was leaking from one end. "How the hell did that get on board?" the captain asked. "Wooden containers aren't authorized for spaceflight." "Yeah, and it's leaking," Doc Howard said, stating the obvious. Monahan stepped up the barrel, touching a fingertip to the liquid puddle on the floor next to it. He sniffed his finger and then tasted it. "Monahan, no!" The sergeant's face broke out in a large grin. "It's wine, sir. Good wine." He cupped his hand under the drip, filled his palm, and drank it. Must be a gift for the miners," Howard suggested. "Maybe someone's having a birthday party." "Monahan, enough of that. You're on duty," Captain Lang said. "Stand that barrel back up and get some straps to tie it in place. Catch up with us when you're done." "Yes, sir," Monahan replied, still grinning. The other three men continued toward the rear of the ship. As he walked, Alex looked back and saw Monahan fill both of his hands with wine and drink deeply. The sergeant then grabbed the barrel and stood it up. As he did, part of the name came into view, painted in black letters along its side. Amontil, Montil. The name seemed familiar, and Alex wondered where he had seen it before. They did not do a lot of business with Italian or Spanish companies, but he must have seen it on a loading manifest somewhere. Then, nor did it explain how a wooden barrel had been cleared for space transport. If it was for a special party, then someone had greased a few palms to get the wine smuggled aboard. Maybe the palm grease was Monahan's, since he was the load specialist, and it was his job to check the cargo. Reaching the ship's engines, they proceeded down a narrow catwalk elevated above 4 big hyperdrives powering the ship. This room was cavernous. The heavy, throbbing sounds of the engines bounced off the metal walls like the sound of a giant heartbeat. Leaving the engine room, they finally reached the interior of the back airlock. Beyond the first door was a small chamber, and beyond that a second door set in the outside hull of the ship. The aft airlock was the doorway they used when doing spacewalks outside the ship for scheduled maintenance or emergency repairs. The chamber allowed air pressure to be lowered before stepping out into the abyss and raised so their bodies could adjust before re-entering the ship. To the left of the door hung 6 bulky 16-layer spacesuits, each equipped with a heating and cooling unit, self-propulsion jets, and portable life support systems. Despite the alarm warning, the door to the pressure chamber looked to be in perfect working condition. No damage to the rubber seal of the door itself. The view screen to the right of the door showed oxygen levels and air pressure as being normal in the room. Still, they had to visually inspect the exterior door to confirm nothing was wrong with it. A little crack or a tear could quickly develop into a much bigger problem. Everything appears to be normal here, Captain Lang said, stepping back from the view screen. And I better check to make sure. Howard grabbed one of the specimens and spacesuits off the rack. Better safe than sorry, especially with a ship this old. The captain nodded. Alex, give Doc a hand getting into that suit. Once fully suited, Doc Howard opened the first door and entered the pressure chamber. The suit was bulky, and he had to turn sideways to get through the door. It also weighed several hundred pounds on full gravity, and he moved slowly to keep from falling. Captain Lang closed the door, resealed it after Howard, watching the engineer's progress through the small window in the door. Howard almost reached the other end of the chamber when the handle of the exterior door jiggled and then stopped. The engineer froze. Alex also saw the handle move. Captain, did you see that? I did. Captain Lang nodded. He touched a communicating button to the right of the door, broadcasting his voice to the speakers in Howard's helmet. Probably nothing, Doc. We must have caused an air current when we opened the door and closed the interior. Just a ripple. Carry on. Howard looked back at them and nodded, then continued forward to the exterior door. He reached out to inspect the seal when the handle moved again, jerking up and down violently. Captain, I don't think that's an air current, Howard said. There's a sharp ping as the handle itself snapped in place. The interior piece falling into the floor at the engineer's feet. What the hell is that? Howard's voice sounded miles away. The screech of tearing metal filled the pressure chamber as part of the exterior door was torn and pulled outward, creating a gaping, jagged hole. Doc, get out of there! Get out of there! Captain Lang yelled. And in that hole a nightmare appeared. A bright, orange, and hairy nightmare with a wide black face and deadly fangs. Some bitch! Alex could not believe his eyes. Thick black fingers grabbed the edge of the door, bending the metal outwards, making the hole even larger and revealing what was on the outside, trying to get in. Instantly, the pressure chamber filled with the scream of oxygen rushing out into the vacuum of space, venting through the hole. The vacuum caught Howard, dragging him against the door. Howard, hang on! Captain Lang adjusted the settings on the view screen, trying to stabilize the atmospheric pressure in the chamber. It's a goddamn monkey is what it is, Alex said, pointing. Not a monkey, but a large, powerful primate covered in orange fur. An orangutan. The orangutan ripped through the door and entered the chamber, making the tiny room much smaller. It was an impossible nightmare that could not exist in the airless vacuum of outer space, and yet, somehow, it did. Howard screamed and tried to back away, but the primate lunged and grabbed at him, slamming his body against the closest wall. Once, twice, 3 times, it bashed the engineer against the wall, crushing his flesh into pulp and causing his bones to snap like brittle pieces of chalk. Howard's plastic and fiberglass helmet exploded in tiny shrapnel along with his skull, blowing out clumps of hair and goo across the chamber. Bloods and bits of flesh splattered against the window and the inner door, sliding down the glass, bouncing, rolling across the chamber floor. As blood and gore hit the window, tinting his view of the carnage, Alex remembered the name on the wooden barrel in the storeroom where he had seen it before, and he realized what was happening. Amontillado. That's what the barrel said, Amontillado. He turned and grabbed Lang by the shoulder. Captain, we got to get out of here, now, before it's too late. The captain tried to pull free. Corporal, have you gone mad? Release me. Captain, listen to me. I think I know what's going on. A loud crash sounded, causing both men to jump. They turned and saw the orangutan had tossed aside Howard's lifeless body and now stood just on the other side of the door. It stared at them through the window, its hot breath steaming up the glass. It's Poe, Captain. It's Edgar Allan Poe. Captain Lang looked back at Alex, trying to comprehend. The writer? Alex released his hold. Yeah, I was listening to Poe when all this started. Something else must have also been listening because it's been pulling stuff out of the stories. The tapping we heard, it's from the Raven. And that? Captain Lang pointed at the orangutan. Murders in the Rue Morgue, another story by Poe. The orangutan jerked on the handle and pounded on the door, trying to get at them. That door ain't going to hold long, Captain. We've got to get to the control room. Yeah, okay, let's go. They reached the cargo hold at a dead run, both men breathing hard. Halfway through the hole, Captain Lang stopped and looked around the room. Alex came to a halt beside him, trying to catch his breath. Monahan! Captain Lang yelled, looking around. There's no sign of the big man. Sergeant Monahan, answer me! Alex looked to his left, spotting the wooden barrel about 30 feet away. It now stood upright, the name Amontillado stenciled on its side. A few feet beyond the barrel stood a wall, but not constructed of space-age metal. On the contrary, no. It was built of ancient brick and mortar, like the walls erected 1,000 years ago on old Earth, like the walls that existed in the 1800s Baltimore home of Edgar Allan Poe. "Oh my God," Alex said, fearing, digging icy fingernails deep into his guts. The brick wall measured over 20 feet wide, running between two gigantic shipping containers, reaching from floor to ceiling. In the center of the wall, about 5 feet off the ground, one of the red bricks had been pushed out and lay upon the floor, and a man's hand protruded from that tiny opening, scraped and bloody, knuckles ripped to the bone, fingertips raw and jagged. Two of the nails torn loose and bent completely back. "Monahan! Monahan! For the love of God, Monahan!" Alex approached the wall, touching the hand. It was cold and lifeless, the hand of a dead man. The burly sergeant who delighted in playing practical jokes on his fellow crewmen had died the victim of a prank in one of Poe's most famous stories. "The Cask of Amontillado," Alex whispered. He released the hand and stepped back. "Goodbye, Wild Bill." The sound of metal doors slamming echoed from the rear of the ship. The murdering beast they left behind must have breached the airlock, was now in hot pursuit. Wasting no more time on Monahan, they hurried in. They secured doors behind them as they moved from compartment to compartment, but they knew locked doors would be only a temporary hindrance for that orangutan. They finally reached the control room, latching the door. Captain Lang rushed to the console, remotely shutting and fastening doors and airlocks throughout the spaceship in a desperate attempt to buy them time. He also turned on all the interior monitors, watching the views from dozens of cameras. It only took a few seconds to spot the orangutan. They moved along the elevated catwalk in the engine room, perhaps following their scent. Alex hurried to the console, summoning holographic keyboards and pushing buttons. You said you know what's going on, Sergeant?" "Yes, Captain, I think so." Captain Lang glanced up at the view screens. The orangutan had already crossed the engine room, entering the cargo hold. The security door between the two sections had not even slowed it down. "Well, you better have a plan, sir." Alex did not look at the captain, focusing his attention on the task at hand. "Captain, earlier when I was listening to the stories by Edgar Allan Poe, there was a power surge, and hell, at least I thought it was a power surge, but now I'm not so sure. I think we were probed by something." "An alien life force?" Yeah, Captain. I think it's fluid energy, a shadow, but the avatars it creates are very solid and very deadly. It scanned our computers. It's using the stuff from Poe's stories against us. Maybe the damn thing is still in the system." He slid the holographic keyboard out of the way and pulled up another one. "That's why I'm deleting the book, giving it nothing more to use. If I remove the book from our system, maybe it'll also remove the alien infection." "That sounds crazy. But yeah, it's worth a try," the captain said. Alex pulled up his list of books, the titles appearing on one of the view screens. 962 books, Corporal?" Captain Lang asked, shocked. "It's a long trip, sir, and I've made it several times. I added titles to my list before each voyage, but never erased any. Now I just have to find the Edgar Allan Poe file." "Get rid of them all," Captain said. "We don't want to creating something else from another book." Right. Delete them all. It might take a few minutes. Some of them are pretty big files." Captain Lang glanced up at the monitors. The orangutan was in the crew quarters now. It paused to sniff the sleeping nets, then tore them off the walls in fits of rage. "Please, hurry, Corporal. That Thing 1 is on its way. I don't want to meet Thing 2. Okay, I'm all set, Alex." Touched a button on one of the floating keyboards. On the view screen before him, the numbers started counting down as book files were wiped from the ship's system. He was halfway done when something crashed into the door guarding the control room. They both looked up the security monitors. The orangutan was on the other side, attacking the metal in a furious rage. "It knows we're in here," Captain Lang said. Alex nodded. "Yeah, maybe the alien knows what we're doing and wants to stop us." The pounding grew louder. The metal door shaking with each angry blow. The orangutan grabbed the latch, violently jerking on it. Captain Lang opened a drawer, grabbing several more stun guns. "Damn, I wish we had something more powerful than these tasers. We should have gotten a laser torch from the cargo." Alex glanced at the view screen, numbers still counting down. He touched the keyboard, bringing up the titles to correspond with the numbers. He was not sure where the collected works of Edgar Allan Poe appeared on that list. 921, 876, 821. The captain looked at the stun guns in his hand, 2 in his left hand and 1 in his right. He switched them on, listening to the shrill whine as they powered up to full charge. He crossed the room to the shaking entrance door. Careful, sir. Alex glanced up from the monitor. That door isn't going to hold much longer. 791, 732, 650. You just get those books erased. Here, monkey, monkey, monkey. The captain smiled. Come on, monkey, come here. Captain Lang touched the business end of all 3 chargers against the metal door handle, sending several thousand volts of electricity through it. From the other side of the door came a primal scream of rage and pain, and the pounding stopped. 615, 550, 491. They both stood staring at the entrance door, heavy silence descending over the room. Alex was afraid to say anything, afraid to move. A full minute passed. 2. 450, 413, 375, 323. Lang turned to look at him. I think I killed it. Corporal Brown turned around to look at the security monitors above him. The area was on the other side of the door, was in camera view. There was nothing there. 301, 275, 263. Sir, I don't see anything. He pushed a button on the console to turn the camera to see the rest of the room on the other side of the door. The orangutan's not there. It's gone. 213, 197, 175. The captain nodded, turning back toward the door. Good, you were right. It's electrical. The zap I gave it sent the damn thing back to its maker. Bzzz-ta. 159, 145, 127. Alex looked back at the monitor, shocked by what he saw. An orange shape appeared from the darkness at the far end of the room, racing towards the door at full charge, an enraged mass of fur and muscles, deadly fangs, and unimaginable strength. 111, 97, 91. Captain, get away from the door! Alex screamed, grabbing 2 of the stun guns and switching them on. 86, 79, 70. The orangutan slammed into the door like a furious furry locomotive, ripping it completely off its hinges. The door flew into the room with the primate pressed against it, slamming into Captain Lang and sending him flying into a wall. 67, 59, 47. Tossing the broken door aside, the creature roared with anger. It glanced around the room, then turned and advanced toward the captain. 41, 36, 31. The captain lay dazed and unable to move, a trickle of blood running down the side of his head, his stun gun scattered across the floor. 27, 24, 21. The beast grabbed Lang's right leg and snatched him off the floor, shaking him like a rag doll. 19, 15, 13. No! Alex raced across the room, jamming the 2 stun guns against the monster's lower back and squeezing the triggers. There was a rapid popping sound and the scent of burning hair as the stun guns fired their electrical charges. 10, 9, 8. The orangutan howled in rage, dropping the captain on the floor. It spun around and slammed massive fists into Alex's chest, knocking the breath from him, causing his vision to flash white hot. 7, 6, 5. The corporal flew backward, crashing into the computer console hard enough to crack plastic and shatter electrical components. Sparks popped like fireworks as the system shorted out. Backup systems immediately turning on. Warning lights flashed. Alarm bells and whistles sounded. Clouds of white smoke shot up from the damaged equipment. The stench of burning wiring filling the air. 3, 2. The orangutan of opposed nightmares stalked toward Alex. But the young man was stunned, unable to move, and could do nothing to save himself. The primate nearly reached him when it flickered, flashed, and faded out of existence, leaving the 2 men alone in the room. Alex leaned forward, holding his sides until his breath returned, then stumbled across the room to Captain Lang. The captain had taken a nasty bump on the side of the head that required minor first aid, but nothing was broken. They were both lucky to be alive. Helping the captain to his feet, they looked around and surveying the damage. The sparks and the smoke had stopped. The warning bells no longer sounded. The backup systems taking over for the damaged equipment. We did it, Captain Lang smiled. We won. Alex nodded. Well, you'll definitely have something to say in your log, Captain. Captain Lang patted him on the shoulder. I better report. The room shook. Lights dimming, alarm sound again sounding. Oh, what now? The captain looked around. The room shook again. The entire ship shuddered, and they heard the sound of metal being bent and twisted, rivets popping like pistol shots, hydraulic steam pipes bursting with a hiss. The captain rushed to the console, switching the monitors input to the camera mounted outside and along the exterior of the ship. They both saw the image on the view screens, not believing their eyes. Something big had a hold of their ship. Something really fracking big. Open up the shield, Lang ordered. After Alex flipped several switches and the heavy lead and metal shield covering the ship's large windshield began to retract upward, offering a clear view of the front of the craft. As the shield retracted upward, Alex glanced at a view screen in front of him and saw a flashing number 1. To the right of the flashing number 1 was a title, a book title. The computer system had been damaged before his entire library could be erased. One title still remained. Not even a novel, really, but an illustrated short story written by an obscure writer banned for his politics and racist viewpoints. Captain Lang saw where Alex was staring, saw the flashing number. You erased the books? Alex nodded. Yeah, they're all erased. They're all the books, all but one single story. Something tightened around the ship's hull, crushing sheet metal and exterior cowlings. The ceiling above their heads crumbled. Hydraulic fluid spilled down through light fixtures. What story? Captain Lang asked, frightened. Alex raised his head and looked out the window, the shield now fully retracted, staring in horror at the monstrous creature filling the view, a demented mixture of humanoid, dragon, and an octopus, with wings as big as dwarf planets and a face of twisting tentacles, its prodigious clawed hands crushing the condor like an empty beer can. Who is the author? Captain Lang screamed, his mind reeling from the sight before him. Ceilings, floors, walls crumpled inward, engines exploded, cargo containers spilled their treasures out into the vastness of outer space. It's H.P. Lovecraft, sir! Alex dropped to his knees, gazing in absolute terror upon the ancient god of pulp fiction brought to life, watching as the old one delivered pain and merciless death upon them from the inky depths of space, embracing the insanity that entered his mind, tearing his thoughts apart. Hail Cthulhu!